Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review and comparison of small tubing and pipe bending tools. I wouldn't really call them pipe, but for copper tubing and for brake line, clutch line, that kind of stuff. There's obviously a variety of tubing benders out there, mandrel benders, conduit benders, but these would be small automotive related tubing benders. And so we have a comparison of like a Ridgid, we've got a Napa KD Professional, we've got a powerbuilt here, we've got a old funkier Superior tool here, and a couple of knockoff ones. Actually, this is not a tubing bender, but I don't know exactly what it is, but it's what I use it for, and so I included it in this review. I don't have a ton of tubing to actually mangle up for the review, so I'm going to go ahead and use some solid core wire here to demonstrate how each one of these works and the kind of radiuses and arcs that they bend. So oftentimes in vehicles you need to replace brake lines and clutch lines, etc. If you're in HVAC, you'll use a lot of tubing benders anytime you're doing kind of a service, those kind of things, replacing condensers, etc. And these are the kind of tools you would use. There's actually quite a variety of these, and it's really quite surprising. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at some of these here. Here's this one. This is the Superior tool, and it isn't the best quality, but it works just fine for a tubing bender. And what's nice about this one is it will do really small tubing. We've got a powerbuilt here, which is kind of a pliers type, and this is actually my least favorite style because it bends in a very odd manner. We have this Napa KD Professional. They use a solid piece of machined aluminum, which I appreciated. And then this is just a hand bender. The end of the tube hooks under the hook, and then you just bend it over the mandrel. We have a very thin, just a totally no-name sheet metal one, but what's nice is you get two different radiuses. And there are many situations which you'll place a tube and then bend it in place, and this is pretty handy to do that. And then we have a Ridgid. This is specifically a 5/16, and I use it for smaller tubing. Ridgid has a whole series of these, but this is the only one that I have. The nice thing about this Ridgid is that it will bend 180 degrees. Some of these can bend at 180. Some, like this Sheffield and the Powerbuilt, cannot. The Ridgid is really the highest quality one, and I'll show you here. It weighs several pounds. They use multi-plate, 4-plate steel. It has nice, appropriate markings. In certain situations, and I'm not sure how to do this, but it helps you calculate the amount of stretch when you make a bend, how much extra material you have. And they even have some guides actually on the inside of the plate there. I also really like the lever where you can put in the tube and then click it over. Let's go ahead and see how this Ridgid works. You would just move it over like this, open it up, and just put in whatever would be your virtual tube. What's really nice is they have pins and stops, so when you put it all together, it just sits there at 0. And then the way this one works, it's just so incredibly smooth and perfect, because if you just want a 45, now this is a wire, so you have to go a little bit past. The same thing with tubing. You got to go a little bit past, probably a little more than that. And then look, now we have just a nice little 45-degree bend, and it's real easy just to go back, turn that into a 90-degree bend like so. And the nice thing about the Ridgid is we can go all the way around. There we go. And have a nice 180 degree. And then what I like about the system is you can just lift it out. It's really easy to get the tubes in and out of this. It's bulky, but you basically, with the handles being so long, you don't even feel any resistance. And we can see we got a really pretty nice tight bend. Now if we compare that to how the Powerbuilt works, and this is what's always frustrated me, is I do have a small die, so with this wire it's almost matched properly with the 3/16 die. But when you put the tubing in there, it kind of pulls it this way, and so it's kind of nonsensical. It works in a few random situations, but it's just a little bit odd. And that there is no markings, there's no real way to measure that you're getting to 90 degrees. It appears that that's exactly what it attempts to do, is a 90 degrees at maximum compression, but it doesn't quite do that with this wire, although I assume it would with the tubing. You really use these for small adjustments once a tube is already in place. And you can see it can't go past 90 at all, so there's no way to get it to overcompensate, which oftentimes you need to, and so you still have to bend it a little bit by hand to get a perfect 90. where obviously that Ridgid would have no problems whatsoever. Now, the Napa one is really pretty simple because you just take the tube and put it in whatever groove you need to, and then you just bend it by hand. The nice thing is, being a finely machined anvil here, it does hold the tube really well, and it does prevent it from wanting to splay too much, and you can feel that because it'll get kind of jammed between the walls and you have to pop it out. But the nice thing about the Napa is it's just kind of a nice, easy hand tool to use. It's compact, and it's really easy to see exactly how far you are, like say with a 90-degree bend here. And we can see that came out nicer. And it's a little bit more of a curve than how the powerbuilt made the bend, and I like that a little better. It means that there's going to be a little bit less restriction. The Sheffield is also in the same situation, or the Superior tool, excuse me. It's made in Sheffield. It's not very smooth. I probably should oil it, but it does work pretty well. And it will only do a 90-degree bend. Let's see if I can get it in the appropriate groove. There we are. And so here's the idea. They have two markings, one for 45 and one for 90. You would have to go a little bit past to get a good 45. What is nice about this little tool is it will go past 90 to help overcompensate, so you actually get a true 90-degree. And even though it's really basic, it's actually small and simple, kind of like the Ridgid. And it makes a much tighter bend, and so for smaller tubes that's handy. And one of the things about getting these lines is the shape of the arc isn't such a big deal unless you're getting close to, say, an ABS pump. I've replaced a few brake lines to ABS pumps, and when they get close they have to go, you know, sometimes some really crazy convoluted pathways. And that's where a variety of these kind of tools helps, is because you can get large arcs or you can get small arcs, such as this red one here. And you end up getting a line that is routed just a little bit more nicely, where you can have it tight when you need it to be and have it broad where you don't, or where you want it to have a greater arc. Now this last tool here, this fork tool, has a little articulating head. I have no idea what it was intended for, but I've been using it to finely adjust rake lines. When I put them, say, in a fitting in an ABS pump, it's really important that the line is absolutely perpendicular and square with the banjo, the compression fitting. When they're kinked over, it puts more stress on one side than the other. You have to over torque the nut. It's really a bad situation. It's not hard, especially with a tool like this, to come in and just doing a little adjustment. Like if we wanted to make a little jog to get something to line up, I would just use this tool in this kind of fashion. And well, that wasn't very good. Let me do that again here, because this does work. If we want a little jog, we'd come and bend the wire over this way, and then we come back up and then just bend it back straight again. And see, in this situation you can have a nice little jog. You're only doing very light bends, so you don't have to worry too much about kinking, and they're nice round posts on this tool. And I thought, versus using needle nose pliers, which tend to ding in, anything that has two round posts would be really optimal, because you can just do these little pathway adjustments. Being a fork, you can put it, you can have the line be real close to where it needs to be, and just use it to finally adjust it until it's totally straight. And so that was kind of the point of the review, is if you just get one tubing bender, what you may find is that, it never turns out quite right. And oftentimes these are all pretty cheap. I mean, the Ridgid I paid $20 used for, but the rest of these was probably $30 for all of them put together. And so when you have a variety of them, you can get, a more professional job and be able to get things to fit a little bit more nicely and with less hassle. Anyway, that was my tubing bender review from Catus Maximus. I really appreciate everybody subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel. Thanks again. Bye.